All right. Welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today, and also delighted to have Arlen with me. It is an Arlen Tuesday, and I have to get used to saying Arlen Tuesday. Arlen, how are you today? How are you this Tuesday?
Well, not so good, Hal. You don't seem to be as bothered as I am, but I'm really bothered by what's going on in the political situation internationally and nationally. I think, I'm kind of scared at how far Trump and Musk are going to go.
Well, I'm very upset, Arlen. So that is, my feelings are similar to yours. I think things are very, very bad. I'm very troubled by the way things are going. Much of what the Doge, if you want to call them that, is doing under Musk, I think is absolutely terrible, horrific. Cutting, for example, I was protesting yesterday outside the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration cuts there. That's obviously a terrible thing to do when we're facing a climate holocaust. The last thing we should be doing is cutting funding for studying the destruction, the sixth grade extinction caused by human activity. So I am as troubled as you are. I think where you and I disagree, or where we have different views, is I was equally troubled or almost as troubled by the actions of Harris, Biden, Blinken, and that unsavory crew. Whereas for some reason, which I totally don't understand, you seem to give them a pass, or you just don't view them as having been as harmful, destructive, and murderous as the current team is.
Well, Hal, we all watched that press conference, and I think it was horrendous. I think Trump and Vance just kind of ambushed Zelenskyy. They decided, what they wanted to have, and they weren't going to listen to him, and they treated him very poorly, I thought. They really disrespected him and his country. And I don't think they're going to be very helpful to Ukraine.
All right, well, we'll get to that in just a moment, Arlen. I just wanted to, and sorry if I got a little heated there, but it's been very tough for me because I really, internally, because I'm watching, and I've been watching what I've been perceiving my country going very quickly downhill for quite a while. And the last real hope I had was that Bernie Sanders would win in 2016. He was torpedoed by the Democratic establishment. I did what I could. I thought to, what I could. I did the best I could, I thought, in terms of what I could do to bring down the corporate Democratic elites who control that party, failed utterly in that endeavor. And what's even more upsetting to me is that it seems as though people who I think are very intelligent, smart, informed, don't understand, haven't been able to accept how responsible, how complicit in our nation and our world's decline the Democratic Party is. Yes, Republicans stink. But the fact is, I live my life looking at what Harris, Biden, Blinken did, and I'm absolutely aghast and horrified. And and to say, well, look, Trump was mean to poor Zelenskyy. Oh my God, what an awful thing. He was actually hurtful to this man. What is that relevant? That's why I say, does it matter? There's a horrible war going on. It's cost over $1 trillion. It's destroyed large chunks of Ukraine. It didn't have to happen. Harris, Biden, Blinken pushed it. They provoked it to a degree. Now, I don't, in any stretch of imagination, excuse or exonerate Putin. Of course, he's also to blame. But there were opportunities to stop it, and instead, the Harris, Blinken, Biden team went full bore to provoke war, to keep it going. And I just don't think there's an acceptance of just how horrible, what a terrible crime that was. And so, yes, I'm very upset. And I don't really, who cares if Zelenskyy doesn't like it? If Trump is trying to stop the war, which it certainly seems to me he is, we should be saying, that's good. Good for you, Trump. Let's end the killing right now.
Well, the problem is how is it going to end? In what form will it end? Because is Ukraine going to give up a lot of land? Are they going to give Trump all his precious metals, without any guarantee of security? I think the people of Ukraine were pretty much stabbed in the back by Trump and Vance. And Zelenskyy represents the people of Ukraine, and he was treated very poorly. and unfairly, I think. And I think he was kind of, he was surprised to find that he wasn't going to get any help at all from the United States, even though, Congress wanted it, Europe wanted it, everybody wanted some cooperation, but it's not going to happen. Trump and Vance and Musk are going to do whatever they want to do, and no one's able to stop them at this point.
All right, well, let's play the clip because might as well hear from them. We've got about a little over 10 minutes here. We'll play all of it, but I wanted to start it a little earlier than Arlen did, but here's Vance talking to Zelenskyy, and we'll go from there.
That's the way it goes. All right, one more question.
Hey, I will respond to this. So look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the president of the United States' words mattered more than the president of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
All right, let me stop it right there. I think that's incredibly accurate, true. That what J.D. Vance said there makes me proud to be an American to a degree. I don't think it's really accurate. I wish it were the case. But he's saying, hey, we spend all this time thumping our chest and saying, Putin, you have to go back and you have to give up Crimea and you have to give up the territories that you've won. And what's the result been? The entire nation of Ukraine has been decimated. It's being destroyed. What J.D. Vance is saying is, let's do something else. Is he wrong? If so, why?
Yeah, he's wrong. And I think Biden actually did a pretty good job because he kept giving weapons to Ukraine so they could fight back against Russia. Otherwise, Russia would have just mowed them
down. How many dead Ukrainians are resulted from what Joe Biden and Antony Blinken did for the benefit of Antony Blinken's former client, Boeing, and others?
No, Hal, the one to blame is Putin. He's the one that invaded Ukraine, and that's the reason we have this war.
So is that what's important, is pointing fingers and saying, you know what, we're going to keep the carnage going. We're going to have blood all over Ukraine for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, until you get out of Ukraine altogether. Is that the right response?
You're saying that, Hal, but that's not what they're saying.
That's exactly what Joe Biden said. That's exactly what he and Antony Blinken said.
He just didn't want to surrender to Putin, and I don't blame him a bit.
Is it surrender? You mean they're going to go say here, they're going to wave the Soviet troop or Russian troops, the former Soviet Union, they're going to wave the Russian troops into Kiev? Because I haven't heard anyone, even Trump, say that.
No, it's just that they have to, Russia has to stop with their constant bombardment and trying to take over the country of Ukraine, because
isn't that exactly what Biden, isn't that exactly what Trump and Vance are trying to do right now, is get the war to end?
They want to do whatever is going to help Putin, because they've pretty much chosen a different side than America traditionally has been on. They've chosen the side of the dictators, in my opinion.
So Ukraine is a corrupt kleptocracy to a significant degree. But I don't even understand your point. You're saying because Trump is, you're attacking Trump because he's saying we need to negotiate peace. That's your complaint about Trump. Is he saying we need to negotiate a peace?
No, that's not the problem. I mean, we all want negotiations for peace, but the question is,
we didn't, because there were no negotiations under Biden, Blinken, Harris. There were no discussions. There was simply, until you leave Ukraine, there's no talks. That was their negotiating position.
Where are the talks, Al? I don't see any talks right now. I don't see.
Trump's already had discussions with Putin, but the whole point of his meeting with Zelenskyy was, you've got to be part of those conversations. There was all this anger. Well, you should. Why is he conducting it unilaterally, or why is it bilateral? We need to have multilateral. Ukraine needs to be part of it. And Trump saying, yes, yes to Zelensky, get into the conversation with Putin. Let's figure this out so that killing will stop.
Yeah, but the unconditional surrender is not.
But no one's saying unconditional surrender. That's not the position. They're not saying unconditional surrender, Arlen. No one's saying that.
What are they saying? Has Trump said anything about what he'd like to see?
All right, let's play. No one said that. I want a quote. I want a quote where Trump is saying to Zelensky, "You have to surrender," because I haven't heard any of that. Let's play more.
He's not going to provide any security.
Okay, so he occupied our parts, big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now the President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact
2015.
Can we stop? Howard? Because I think what Zelensky is trying to do is tell the history of negotiating with Russia, that Russia doesn't follow their agreements. Russia does whatever it wants to do, and it breaks agreements like 25 times. So, negotiating with Putin, that's great, but he's not going to follow up with what the negotiations result in. So,
well, Zelensky has a certain historical perspective, and there are other perspectives as well, which we'll get into later on. But I thought it was interesting there because Zelensky is describing the history as he perceives it, and nobody's interrupting him. He's getting to speak. I thought everyone was being so rude to him. They wouldn't let him talk. They were treating him so badly. But he got to make his case right there. And I'll play you some more. But he sure is able to make his case to Trump. But to the point that you're raising is security guarantees. That's why you talk. You have Zelensky sit down with Trump and Putin, and I would get France, Germany, everyone, or UK in there. Germany don't have much of an army. Get UK, France in there, and you talk about it, and you say, okay, well, we're, because otherwise, what happens? You have a completely destroyed Ukraine. Because, right, those are your two options, right? Those are the only alternatives right now. Ukraine is losing the war. Russia's advancing. The country is being laid waste. So your options are either you have a conversation or Ukraine is destroyed.
Well, let me ask you a question now. Do you think it's fair that Trump could negotiate a deal in which he gets billions of dollars of their precious metals in return for nothing?
I think that's really bad. I don't like the way Trump did that. I think that was ugly. I think that was low class. I think that was totally inappropriate. And okay. What Trump would say in response is, well, listen, we've already spent $1 trillion. We've already spent all this money, and therefore we need to get paid back. That would be his answer. My response to that is, hey, the last guy did that. It was a terrible waste of money. It made us all less safe and made us all poorer. But you shouldn't try to leverage that out of Zelensky. So no, I think Trump's totally wrong when it comes to trying to get that rare earth minerals. In fact, I also have a problem with them because that exacerbates the climate catastrophe, which the war is also exacerbating. By the way,
and does it bother you, Hal, that Trump lies about everything? He talks about the great support we gave. He says we give much more than Europe, when in fact Europe gives more. I mean, he's.
Well, I didn't hear him say that, but if that, and I don't know that that's untrue. But that doesn't really. I mean, whatever. So he says there's a lot of bombast. Politicians engage in bombast. I have a real problem with the use of the rare earth minerals. I thought that was terrible. What Trump did. You want to argue about who spends more money? Fine, we can. That's not a big deal to me. What matters to me more than anything else is trying to end the killing. I want the killing to stop. We have been promoting. We have been provoking. We have been partly, not 100%, but we have been a significant reason. Our actions are a significant reason so many Ukrainians, probably hundreds of thousands, are dead. So I want that to stop.
I wanted to stop too, but we don't want unconditional surrender. Zelensky.
But no one's saying that, Arlen. That's a straw person. There's a straw argument.
I think that's pretty much it. If the United States is not going to come and support Ukraine, then who is? It's going to have to
the
be
Security Council of the United Nations, which is the appropriate place to resolve these international disputes. Let me play some more of the clips.
2014 and 2015.
2014.
Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah, but
That's exactly right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, the situation the same. The people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversation, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him, me, like a new president. In 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed.
No, I'll stop it there for a second.
Yeah,
So again, there's no interruptions. Zelensky's just making his case. He's describing the history as he perceives it.
Yeah.
And I was sort of surprised to watch all this because I thought Trump had been so rude and so cutting him off and wouldn't let him give his speech. Now, again, he's describing the history, and certainly Russia bears a lot of the blame. But Zelensky's presenting a very one-sided, and we'll get into some other perspectives of what was going on during this period in a little bit from The Nation magazine, which I think is pretty credible. But again, you can't say Trump was being rude or disrespectful in that section, Arlen.
No, I'm not. But later on, he will. We'll see. Okay,
let's play some more.
Exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about?
So I have another point here. So Zelensky's argument, as I understand it, and maybe I'm wrong here, Arlen, what I'm hearing Zelensky say is, hey, we tried to talk with Putin. We tried to have conversation with Putin. We agreed to things. Putin broke them. So therefore, all bets are off. We're just going to have endless war with Russia, no matter how, and Ukraine is going to fight till the last Ukrainian. And we need you, the U.S., to just keep funding that. Isn't that what Zelensky's saying, or am I missing something?
Don't you think history is important, Hal?
I absolutely do. I think it's very important. I think the lessons of history are important. Is the lesson from that history that there should be no negotiations with Putin?
The lesson for that is you can't trust Putin, and I think that's
okay. So then, if you can't trust him, what should be done if we can't trust him?
Well, you get everybody together: Europe, the United States, Ukraine. All that, but right now, Trump only wants to negotiate with Putin and himself.
That's not the case, Arlen. That's why he's having the meeting with Zelensky, is to bring Zelensky into the talks with Russia.
Why didn't he invite Zelensky in the first place? Zelensky's part of the whole war, so a very major part of it.
Well, he's not willing to engage in those conversations. So how are you going to bring him in if he's not? So you're saying because Zelensky says no conversation, Trump should continue the blank check of that we've given Zelensky, just keep sending him more and more weapons, no matter how. What Trump is saying is, hey, we're not going to fund this war endlessly. It's not going to go on forever. We aren't going to keep. If you have a choice, sit down, negotiate with Putin. We'll be there. The UN will be there. We're going to have these discussions, but we're not going to just keep sending you more and more weapons. And by the way, isn't that position that Trump's taking far better for the people of Ukraine than the one that Biden-Harris, Blinken took, which was we're just going to keep giving you weapons forever, which has led to the entire nation being destroyed?
Yeah, but how Trump and Putin didn't invite Zelensky. It's not like he refused. They won't let him negotiate with them.
He's refusing right now. That's the whole point of this conversation with Zelensky, is to get him in the conversation with Putin.
But first, they're going to get what they want, decide what they want, and then they're going to push Zelensky into what they want.
Well, in the end, Zelensky has to recognize that, yes, his country borders on Russia. It's in the Russian sphere of influence. It's kind of like what would happen, and I've got a quote here, if it was Mexico was teaming up with Russia What would you expect? Would you expect that Mexico and Russia get to decide? Or in the end, doesn't the United States have a lot more influence? Certainly the United States has exercised often very malign influence over the countries in this hemisphere, has it not? With very little. Every now and then Russia gets involved in Cuba, but no weapons in Cuba. In fact, Cuba has an American base right on the island of Cuba, Guantanamo Bay. And Ukraine was what Putin was saying is, we don't want NATO in Ukraine. Just like Kennedy said, we don't want Russian missiles in Cuba. No one said that was unreasonable of Kennedy. Kennedy got a lot of praise for that position.
I don't see any way that Ukraine's going to get into NATO. I don't think that's an issue at the moment. The issue is, does Ukraine unconditionally surrender to whatever Trump?
No one's saying that's a straw argument, Arlen. No one's calling for Ukraine to surrender. No one. That's not anyone's position.
We don't know.
All right, let me play some more, Arlen, because we got a lot. Here we go. We don't
mean.
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President.
All right, so wait a sec. I want to just stop it right there. So what J.D. Vance says to him is, all right, I don't want to go too far. He says, I want us to have diplomacy because Zelenskyy says, what kind of diplomacy can you have? What kind of diplomacy can you have with Putin? So then let's keep going.
JD, you are speaking about. What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Isn't that pretty relevant? Isn't Vance correct? Let's have diplomacy. He's saying to Zelenskyy, we've got to sit down with Putin to end the destruction of your country. Why is that even a little bit controversial?
Well, Hal, because for one thing, Ukraine doesn't have any way to stop them. Ukraine is all by itself. Trump won't support them. The United States won't support them. So they're pretty much giving in to whatever.
No. Vance is saying we've got to sit down and have these conversations to end it. That's what Vance is calling for. And then before he can even get the words out of his mouth, by the way, Zelenskyy interrupts him.
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring it into.
Let me stop it. So Vance is speaking. He didn't speak for very long. And at that point, Zelenskyy interrupts him. What Vance is saying is absolutely true. They are forcing conscripts. I saw a video. I didn't show it. I don't want to show it right now, but there's no doubt about it. Ukrainian authorities are going around the streets and they're taking men off the streets and forcing them into the military. Many of them die after a few months. The war has been a disaster for that country. It's destroying the country. So I don't see how this is, again, controversial, what Trump and Vance are saying.
Well, Zelenskyy and Ukraine don't want unconditional surrender to whatever Trump and Putin want. And Trump and Putin.
That's right. And no one's asking them to surrender. No one's asking them. The word was negotiate. The word was to have a conversation. The discussion was whether to have a conversation, not to surrender.
Why won't they let Zelenskyy in on their negotiations?
That's what they're saying right now. Let's have negotiations. That's exactly what they're trying to do, is get Zelenskyy into the negotiations. Yeah, and he's saying no. In fact, that's what Zelenskyy just said, Arlen. Arlen said, he said to Vance, he said, you're saying negotiate. What kind of negotiations can we have? See, he said that because Vance is telling Zelenskyy, your country is falling apart. It's being destroyed. We're asking you to negotiate as a condition of our continuing to supply you with weaponry.
What are they going to ask for? I mean, they're going to ask for half of Ukraine. They're going to ask for all their mineral rights. They're going to do whatever they want to do because Ukraine has, no power by itself. And the United States
they don't. That's right. Ukraine doesn't have a lot of power compared to Russia or the United States. That's why you sit down and you have a conversation, because we don't feel like, and I think you would agree, we shouldn't be funding an endless war, a proxy war with Russia that's leaving Eastern Europe in absolute shambles.
I think we're doing the right thing by supporting, Biden was, by supporting Ukraine, because Ukraine is trying to stop Russia from going into the rest of Europe, from taking more territory, because Putin wants everything he can get.
But what do you base that on? What do you base that statement, Putin wants everything he can get? Has he, because when Hitler wrote a book, right? He wrote a book in which he laid out all the things he was going to do. He needed Lebensraum in the East. Germany needed to be Juden-free, whatever. That was all in there. The German race is destined to rule. So people could say, hey, maybe it's not a good idea to give this nut, this monomaniac, Czechoslovakia, which he's going to take without even firing a shot. That, I get that. But I don't get this at all. Russia's fought a long war after there was plenty of provocation. Now, whether that justified what Putin did, I don't think it did. But he certainly thought it did. He has not expressed any ambitions to try to get into Western Europe. And I would add that Russia is not a big country right now. The total population of Russia, and I looked this up before the program, is less than Germany and France. UK and France are nuclear powers. I don't think they have a lot to fear from Russia.
You know what you're disregarding, Hal, is the fact that Putin's a dictator. He's not going to write a book. He doesn't need to write a book. He will do whatever he wants because he controls his country. He controls the people. He controls the press. He's a vicious, ruthless dictator who kills his enemies. And we, when we're negotiating with somebody like Putin, we have to be very, very careful and look at history. And history tells us that Putin doesn't follow whatever he agrees with. Putin does whatever he wants.
Well, we should, of course, be very careful in our conversations and negotiations. No argument. But that doesn't mean we should negotiate.
I think Trump has put his lot in with Putin, and that.
Based on what? What's your evidence for that?
Because he's agreeing pretty much with whatever Putin wants.
He said we need to sit down and negotiate. That's what he said. He didn't say, we'll give him out. What he said is, and he said, yeah, Ukraine may have to give up some territory. It's true. Well, they lost the territory. There was a terrible war. And if you want to blame someone for that, blame Harris, Biden, Blinken for not negotiating, for stymieing and scuttling negotiations. Blame Obama. Blame Trump because he provoked Russia too. We can get into all that. There's a lot of blame to be had. But right now, we're in a situation where Ukraine is slowly but steadily being crushed. It's in a vice. It has no real options short of fighting to the last Ukrainian. Trump is saying, we don't want this. You don't want it. We don't want it. Let's figure a way out.
I don't think Trump cares a bit about the Ukrainian people. He just wants everything he can get, whether it be precious metals, whether it's hotels in Ukraine, or whatever he wants, he'll try and get. He doesn't care about the people.
I think that the metals deal is a terrible look. I think that provides a lot of legitimate fodder for Trump's political enemies. But ultimately, what he's pushing for here clearly is an end to the killing. He said that he wants peace. He said he wants the killing to stop. He said he doesn't want people to die. It seems to me he's acting consistently with that statement. All right, let me play some more of this, Arlen.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to...
Come once.
All right, so he just interrupts him twice. Arlen, did you see that? 2 times Zelenskyy interrupted Vance. So I find it odd because I kept hearing, and this was the section where supposedly Trump and Vance were so rude and they disrespected him. And just now, twice, the vice president of the United States is speaking and he's interrupted.
Well, wait a minute, and you'll see how.
Okay, but do you concede that point? Do you agree with me that I'm right there?
It's a conversation. He's responding.
It's not he's interrupting him. He's interrupting him.
Destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring it into this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have
And do you think that it's
I will
respectful
answer.
to come to the Oval Office
I
of the
will
United
answer.
States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You don't know
God
that.
bless. You will not
you
have
gotta-
a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
Here
We're
we
trying
go.
to solve.
Don't you think Trump was absolutely right to be pissed off at that remark?
No.
What
no,
a
no.
nerve for Zelensky. Zelensky's the client state. We have propped up Zelensky. We have propped up Ukraine. And now he's saying, oh, well, if you don't do what we want, if you don't keep giving us more and more of your treasure, so we can sacrifice our people, then you're going to feel pain in the future.
Well, what I heard was a lot of Fox News talking points coming from Vance, who's never been to Ukraine, and he started to say, well, maybe, you know, then he had to say, I've never been there. I don't know what I'm talking about. And he gets his news from Fox News or Newsmax or whatever, and that's what he goes by. Zelensky is in the country of Ukraine. He knows what's going on, not Vance. And Trump
but Vance asked him. He said, "Hey, do you deny that you're having trouble getting that you're having manpower shortages?" And Zelensky doesn't deny it. He doesn't say, "Yeah, we are having those problems."
That's a Fox
He does
News
say
talking
that
point.
actually.
Why is that important, Al? Why is it important
Because the
now?
country can't continue the war because the war needs to end. He's saying to him, "Look, your country is being depopulated. Sit down and talk to Putin to end this." That's why it's important. You don't see that?
Zelensky, to be able to do what, to stop Russia from, I don't know. I don't understand how you could, why that's important,
Well, because the country can't sustain it. They're fighting a war that's destroying them internally and externally. That's why it's important. Because Zelensky's coming to Trump and saying, I don't want to talk to Putin. I just want you to keep sending us bombers and missiles and bombs and ammo. We just want you to keep giving us more and more weapons so we can make it as painful and as difficult for Russia as possible to ultimately defeat us. That's what Zelensky's saying. And J.D. Vance is saying, you're going to lose. You don't have enough men. You can't continue this war. So stop fighting it right now and have a ceasefire with Russia, sit down and negotiate, and let's figure this out before the rest of the country is destroyed. How is that not commonsensical?
It's very interesting that you're talking from Zelensky and telling everybody what Zelensky thinks. Zelensky can speak for himself.
I don't tell him what Zelensky thinks. I never said what Zelensky thinks. He is speaking for himself.
You said it. Yeah, I think you just did. And
what did I? How did I put my thoughts in Zelensky's head? What did I say?
Well, you just said, Zelensky wants this, Zelensky wants that. And
well, he does. That's why he's there. I didn't put those there. That's why he's there. He's saying to Trump and Vance, we're not going to negotiate. You can't negotiate with this guy. And if you don't keep giving us weapons, you're going to feel it. That's exactly what he said. I didn't put those words in his mouth. That's what he said.
Well, Zelensky doesn't want Russia to take over his country. He doesn't want his country destroyed. He doesn't want Putin to be in charge of the government, and he's doing everything he can to prevent that. And the people of Europe understand that, and a lot of people around the world understand that, but apparently Trump doesn't, and you don't.
Well, I don't, because I'm not hearing anyone say that Putin gets to have his satellite offices in Kiev. I'm not hearing anyone call for that. And I'm certainly not hearing Trump call for that.
If you go by history, then that's what, the kind of things Trump would do. I mean, Putin would do.
All right. If you want to hear more of this ongoing argument, you'll definitely find it at Halitics on Facebook. There it is, the Join Halitics on Facebook. And also, don't forget, click like, click subscribe. Definitely want to see more and more folks. Arlen and I do have these beefs, and I don't love it, Arlen. I really don't. I don't know how to avoid it. We obviously both feel strongly about this, but I feel strongly about people being killed. I don't want more dead. And you're saying you don't and nobody does, but That's not what I think the history shows. I think the history shows that the previous administration was utterly callous when it comes to the death and destruction in that war, as well as in Gaza.
I think they did the right thing. Biden and the Democrats did the right thing by supporting Ukraine and, in defense of democracy, basically. I think Ukraine is fighting for everybody else. They're losing soldiers because they're trying to stop, Russia from coming into his country and then going further into Europe. So,
but they're not stopping. First of all, they're not stopping them. It's been slow, but Russia is advancing. So that effort has not succeeded. And the point that Vance and Trump are making is, hey, let's end this now without your losing more territory. And no one is, there's no legitimate reason to fear Russia advancing past Ukraine. There just isn't. That's just not a legitimate concern.
You've seen them take over Crimea and every other possible place, in that area that they can. They want to take everything. And, I think...
But you say that, but where's your evidence? Chapter and verse, Arlen. It's not like, again, Hitler gave everyone a roadmap. People say, oh, well, you can't give Hitler this, you can't give him that. And it was true. You couldn't, because he made it clear that his territorial ambitions knew no bounds. But that isn't the case with Putin. We don't have reason to think that about Putin.
Yes, it is, because he invaded a country unnecessarily, that unprovoked, and that's pretty bad in itself. I can't see any defense of that. And along the way, he's taken, what is it, Crimea, or I forget all the names of the places.
Well, it was Crimea that was seized in 2014 after the Maidan revolution. And again, there's, we could look at that and say he shouldn't have done that. That was wrong. But again, from Putin's perspective, and I think it's really important that we put in ourselves other people's shoes. And it's really important when you recognize what the West has done, how we have stood up, dictators, how we have toppled elected, people like Allende, right? Like you could go back to 1950s in Iran, and was it Mossadegh, who was elected, was a Democrat, democratically elected, and we toppled him in favor of the tyrannical Shah because we wanted the oil in Iran.
Yeah,
how in Allende, a democratic socialist, was targeted by the CIA and a Kissinger-Nixon coup. How under Obama, Hillary Clinton toppled Honduras, a democratic socialist in Honduras was pushed out of office. That's in our hemisphere, and put in a military tyrant. So it's not like the U.S. doesn't do all the same things, Arlen.
Yeah, I don't argue with you at all. The United States has a very bad history, but I think if you're not looking at Putin and seeing what his history and how he's such a dictator and how oppressive he is of his own people. If you don't take that into consideration, then you're being unrealistic.
Of course I take it into consideration. Why would you say I don't take it into consideration? I'm saying if you're Putin, you look at what the U.S. has done, and you're afraid. You're afraid of the United States, and understandably so.
Yeah, but let's not forget, it was Putin, it was Russia who invaded Ukraine. It wasn't the other way around, even though Trump tried to say it was. Trump wants to just change history and say,
well, there's a lot. You have to look at that a little more closely, and I want to get into it if we can. We don't have that much time. It's 2:40. But let me play this. This is your guy. This is someone you want me to play. So I'll play it.
How come you stopped, Hal, when Trump started to interrupt?
Oh, you want me to go back? Because you know what? I'll tell you the answer is because we're running out of time. But I'll go back to Putin if you want. We can go back to Zelensky. Let's see if we can get this up. I'm going to have to be a little bit judicious here in how I edit because I've got to go forward. But I will do that. That's fine. I just thought it was time to get some other voices because we hadn't, because we've heard plenty from these two. But that's fine. Let me see if I can let me just zoom a little bit ahead here.
All right.
Okay, here we go.
Hey, what we're going to feel.
We're
going to feel very good.
Feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning.
So that was the section. I'll play more. But what I'm seeing there is two men talking over each other. I'm not seeing Trump being particularly rude or disrespectful. I see Trump irritated when Zelenskyy says to his patron, because the U.S. is absolutely Ukraine's patron. When Zelenskyy says to his patron, oh, you're going to feel it too. If you don't do what we want, you're going to suffer. And Trump's like, hey, don't tell me what the U.S. is going to go through. And who can blame him for saying that?
Yeah, but Trump doesn't want to help Ukraine. He doesn't want to guarantee security and military help to Ukraine. So, he's
Well, you don't think ending this murderous, destructive war is helping Ukraine? You think?
But not by surrendering unconditionally.
But he did no. But that's not what Trump is calling for. No one's saying to Zelenskyy surrender. No one's saying that. All right, we'll play more.
Not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having
I'm not playing cards.
Right now, you don't.
You're
playing cards.
Mr. President.
You're playing cards.
Serious.
You're gambling with the
president
lives of millions of people.
Isn't that true? What he's saying? You're gambling with the lives. Isn't Trump right?
No, I think
there's 30 million people.
I don't think it's Zelensky's fault. He's just trying to keep his country intact. He's trying to save his country. And
well, if he wants to save his country, why doesn't he sit down with Putin and Trump and try to end it? Because his country is being destroyed. It's not being saved by his actions. It's being destroyed.
Yeah, because they're not inviting him. They don't want him in there. They want to do what they want to do. And they know he doesn't have any military clout to do anything about it. And by the way, Trump invited Zelenskyy into this meeting, and he's being very disrespectful of somebody who invited into his home.
How is it disrespectful to say to the guy, let's sit down and talk? We've funded your war. We funded this war for 3+ years, and your country is falling apart. So let's end it. How is that disrespectful?
Well, the way he says it, you're threatening World War III, and you're doing all these terrible things when, Zelenskyy has no clout at all. He's just hoping for some support.
Well, if he has no clout, if he really has no clout, why is he pushing back and arguing? Why doesn't he say to Trump, hey, yeah, you know what? This war sucks. It's been a disaster for my country. It's led to hundreds of thousands of deaths. Millions of people's lives have been destroyed. The land has been laid waste. Please, Mr. President, I welcome, please, let's sit down with Putin and figure out a way that we can resolve it where Ukraine retains security and territorial integrity. Wouldn't that be the right response by Zelenskyy in this situation? If he really has no power, no cards, no military?
He doesn't know what Trump and Putin are going to do to his country. And he wants to protect his country, understandably.
Well, then if he but his country isn't being protected, right? His country has been destroyed.
Well, yes, it has. And the United States needs to help support Ukraine militarily, or it's going to be overrun.
No, the support that we've given it militarily is the reason it's falling apart. What we should have done is pressed for peace. All right, I'll play. You want to play more of this? You want me to go to Olbermann? Yes. You want me to show? Because we only have so much time. I really can't go past 3:15. We've gone 40.
Now, what about all this? All right.
Gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's backed you far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once?
So he keeps interrupting. By the way, did you notice that? Zelenskyy, now it's true, Trump raised his voice. I don't care. So he raised his voice. But the fact is, Zelenskyy kept pushing back and arguing, and he was provoking Trump. He was being provocative. Trump is saying to this guy, and I totally get where Trump is coming from. This has got to end. Your country is being destroyed. Don't you care? Trump said after the fact, he says, hey, Zelenskyy doesn't want peace. Isn't Trump right? It's clear he doesn't want peace, does he?
Want peace, Al. That's but you're also overlooking what J.D. Vance was saying. J.D. Vance was saying, you don't wear a suit. You don't say thank you. He was just insulting Zelenskyy.
Yeah, he didn't need to say that. They're not perfect. They say the wrong things too. I get it. So what? So what? Who cares about that? What matters is getting the war to end. Shouldn't that be the priority, job one? And it clearly is Trump and Vance. They're saying to Zelenskyy everything they can. Your country's falling apart. You can't raise troops. You don't have weapons. You're losing. Sit down with us and Putin and let's work this out. Isn't that what we should want? Isn't that what you think? Don't you?
We should want peace, but Zelenskyy is smart enough to know that he's not going to get away with much at all because these guys are too strong, Trump and Putin.
Well, you're right. It's a smaller country, but the fact of the matter is that, again, he's not even trying. And you're saying over and over that Trump's just saying you have to give up, you have to surrender. Trump never said that. Zelenskyy, Vance didn't say surrender. Vance said we want to negotiate. Negotiating isn't surrendering.
Yeah, but negotiations, Zelenskyy has to be very careful about what these negotiations.
Well, he should be careful. I agree with you. He should be careful. He should be careful, and so should Trump. They should be careful. But that's not what he's being. He's just being reckless, and he's being provocative when he should be trying to end. When in fact he's in a terrible situation. His country's being crushed like a bug, and he should want that crushing to end.
Well, we could go on. If you want to go on to Olbermann, I think that would be okay.
All right, here's Olbermann.
It is impossible to believe that the British Prime Minister has not already fired Mandelson. Recalled is the polite term.
By the way, this was the section you wanted. This is starting at page 3 and or 3 minutes in, and this is where Olbermann is going on and on about how the Brits, how dare they? They're agreeing with Trump and they're putting pressure on Zelenskyy, and instead they should be doing whatever Zelenskyy wants. So this is the bombast from Olbermann. I want to know, because I was listening to this, Arlen, what is it that he says, and I'll play it and just tell me to stop, that you feel is like analytic, where you feel like Olbermann makes a good argument. He uses logic and facts to try to persuade us that we should continue to support Zelenskyy at all costs. So here we go.
Well,
would be.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I wanted to hear where it starts at 42 minutes and 15 seconds. I'm not sure.
Oh, I thought you said 3 to 4. I'll go to 40. That's fine. Let's go there then. So this is a section you wanted to hear.
Yeah. What Churchill stood
40. Wait, I'm sorry. 42 or 1242?
42. 42.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm sorry. I thought I had the wrong. Folks, you get to see the slider. Kind of cool, I guess, in a way. 42. Okay. Here we go.
Tells the German news outlet Zeit. MSNBC had a full day of interviews scheduled with him for his new Trump book, but MSNBC canceled it out of fear of Trump. I've known Michael Wolff a long time. I think I interviewed him first in the old MSNBC show in 1997 or 1998, and I've never fully decided. A lot of his information is 100% insightful and great, and his analysis is really good, and his picture of the world of media is sometimes prescient by years, and then the rest of the time he's full of it. So I don't know if this is true or not, but given the race purge at MSNBC...
Is this what you were talking about, Arlen?
Not really, but...
Because I don't know, where did you want to go? Because that doesn't sound like what you wanted at all.
Not exactly, but go a little bit further maybe and see if you have what I want.
All right, because this is 42. This is 4226. You had said 1242, not 42, 1242.
Well, originally, but then I figured, this is...
All right, here we go. Well, let's hope so, because I'm waiting to hear what's persuasive that contradicts what I've been arguing. So here we go.
Have we forgotten about Joy Reid already?
No.
And Fang and the...
No, I'm not sure. Can you get closer to 50? Maybe 45?
But what is he talking about, if I can ask you that?
Well, I don't want to put words in his mouth. So yeah.
All right, here's 48. We'll do a little more, and then we're going to move on
to space on Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin next mission.
Forget it.
All right. Well, we'll deal with this maybe next week. I thought you wanted to talk about how the Brits gave in to Trump or something of that nature, or not.
Oh, what Oberman is trying to say is we've pretty much lost World War III because we're going in and siding with Putin and against Europe, and he's totally upending the world order, and instead of going ahead with what we used to do, and that was to support democratic countries against Russian dictators, and we're not doing that now. And now we're siding with the dictators, and that's just going to end badly. And what are we going to do? Europe is going to have to do it alone without the United States, and that's not going to be a good thing at all.
Well, let me show you. This is a cartoon that was on one of our mutual friends' Facebook pages. I think it kind of, maybe this gives you a little flavor of what Olbermann's fear mongering. But that, something like that, right, Arlen?
Well, yeah.
So I respond to this because I just think this is the height of recklessness and irresponsibility, the fear mongering that you're seeing there. And I responded by saying, hey, that's not simple. It's just simple-minded. It's not doesn't accurately depict the circumstances right now. Wait a sec, let me figure something else out. Let me put this here, but I want to get, yeah. So I call that simple-minded, Arlen, because I don't think it in any way fairly or accurately represents the situation. Russia is lost maybe 1 million people, 1 million troops because of this war. It's been disastrous for Russia. Russia could not defeat even Ukraine. Russia has fewer people than Germany and France. In the early 19th century, Napoleon was within sight of Moscow. He could see actually the Kremlin. Well, I don't know, whatever they call it, the onion domes there. I guess it's the Kremlin. In both 1914, I think, and certainly 1941, the German Wehrmacht was within spitting distance of Moscow. Russia's got far more to fear from Western Europe, does it not, than the alternative?
Well, I think Western Europe has a lot to fear too. Think of World War II, Hal. Think of when Hitler went after country after country. And
right, that was Germany. That wasn't Russia. They had a lot to fear from Germany. I agree.
Yeah, Hitler was the one that went into all these countries, and nobody was willing to. Everybody assumed that he would stop at that certain point, but he kept on going. And I think that's what Putin will want to do. And I don't think Putin really cares about how many soldiers are killed, because he doesn't care about the people. He just wants territory. He wants the power to control Ukraine and then go on from there to other countries in Europe.
Well, you criticize me for allegedly putting thoughts in Zelensky's head, but I just went with what he himself was saying. I didn't make assumptions that this is what he really wants. He was asked to negotiate with Putin. He refuses. So I'm like, okay, well, I don't understand that attitude when your country's being destroyed. But I'm not presuming. I don't know why he's doing it. I don't know whether he's afraid. I don't know why he's doing it. I have no idea. I won't guess. But there's plenty of reasons to think Putin has legitimate fears of the West. And I'm prepared to accept those and acknowledge those. That doesn't mean we don't give security to Ukraine. We should. But I think Ukraine can get that security. And that's why you have the negotiations. So my response, Putin couldn't even defeat Ukraine. Russia has less people than France and Germany. And the response was, well, Russia has nuclear weapons. And so do UK and France. So again, I don't think our fear-mongering that Russia's this terrifying, the Russian grizzly bear is going to tramp all over Europe has any basis in reality at this point, Arlen.
I think you're overly generous to Putin, overly nice to him, and thinking he has good intentions. He does not have good intentions.
I didn't say that. When did I say he has good intentions?
Well, you think we should negotiate and do whatever, right now, Ukraine has no clout in negotiations. What are they going to say? Putin's got all the power, all the weapons, all the control, and he'll get what he wants, and along with Trump, who will go along with Putin. And what's Zelenskyy going to do? He has, he's got to be super careful about any negotiations because the history of these negotiations have been very, very bad.
Well, I agree. You have to be careful when you negotiate, 100%. But that doesn't mean you don't negotiate. But Zelenskyy is saying he's not going to negotiate. All right, this is from Responsible Statecraft, which some might question how credible it is, how legitimate it is, but I use this piece because they cite to a New York Times article in great detail, but I like their analysis better than the Times analysis. But in fact, what they say is completely legitimate based on the Times. So this is from a year ago, Arlen, CIA in Ukraine, because you said it was totally unprovoked, right? That's one of the big arguments against Putin is, well, it was unprovoked. Even if it was unprovoked, you still negotiate. But the fact is that when you recognize the circumstances that Putin was in, you're like, okay, well, I can understand why he did this. And that makes you less, I believe, less certain, less confident that he's just some sort of cruel, vicious tyrant whose only goal is world domination. But instead, you might say, well, yeah, he's under a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, a lot of strain from the West, and he was reacting to that. And therefore, we're not going to be so afraid of him taking over Western Europe. Go ahead. I cut you off. Go ahead.
Putin is going to say all these things, and he doesn't know. His record has been very bad. There's no question that he is a tyrant, that he's a dictator, that he wants to take over countries. And there's never been anything good that he's done that I know of. So I don't know. I think you're overly sympathetic.
Well, I'm just trying to explain, or I'm trying to understand the situation and why we are where we are. And it isn't just about how Putin is some kind of a monster. It's a little more, or it's a lot more complicated than that. And you yourself acknowledge, Arlen, how bad the U.S. has been, how we've done so much harm, how we've caused so much damage. And yet you think, I suppose, that Putin should be willing to talk to us and negotiate with us? Or should he say, no, the U.S. is so evil, they're so dishonest, they're so untrustworthy, that the only thing I can do is have endless war with them?
Well, right now, Trump is giving the United States to Russia. I mean, he's saying, I'm on your side, Putin. And so, why wouldn't Putin want to negotiate with the United States? I mean, of course.
All right. So I want to get into this article. So I jumped through a few parts of it. According to Responsible Statecraft, and they cite to the New York Times, which absolutely makes this point, after the 2014 Maidan coup, the CIA and M16, which is the UK intelligence services, went to Ukraine. They went to whoever took over after Yanukovych. I don't think it was at that point. Maybe it was already Zelenskyy. I don't think it was. Zelenskyy came to power a little later. They went to whoever took over from the Russian, the pro-Russia president, and they said, hey, we want to have our agencies operating, our spy agencies, our security agencies operating in Ukraine. And therefore you have this partnership, the Kiev-CIA partnership. And Kiev routinely pushed this relationship's boundaries. So Obama had said, hey, we don't want to kill Russians. We don't want this to be too provocative. You're not going to go around killing people. But yeah, we want to keep a real close eye so we know what they're doing. We can blackmail them. We can leverage our knowledge of what Russia's doing to protect you and to protect the interests of the West and Western corporations. So according to Responsible Statecraft, Kiev routinely pushed this relation to its boundaries, violating Obama admin's red lines on lethal operations by carrying out assassinations of high-profile Russian fighters on territory controlled by Russian-aligned separatists. So that would be eastern Ukraine, Donbass, and the like. And Kiev-CIA partnership deepened under Trump. So Trump put money into this. He said, hey, let's keep those spy operations in Ukraine going. By the way, this violated or arguably violated, maybe it didn't, the Budapest Memorandum, which said we're going to stay out of Ukraine. We're going to let Ukraine operate independently. That's what the Budapest Memorandum, which we signed, Russia signed, and I don't know the third country that signed it.
How this is old history. It has to do with Obama and Trump's first
except
term.
No, also under Trump. Again, it continued and deepened under Trump. So this isn't something that was new, that ended. It was continuing, and it continued under Biden. And under Biden, what happened? There was all the talk of, and you say that that Ukraine is going to join NATO, but at the time, in 22, there was plenty of talk of Ukraine joining NATO. And here's what I want to read you, this one last part, Arlen, because this is very, very important. Because you're saying it was unprovoked. But what Responsible Statecraft is saying, justification is by nature a subjective exercise, but there can be little question that the activities described in the New York Times expose constitute from the Kremlin's perspective. That is, all these CIA moles and operatives all over Kiev spying on Russia from or all over Ukraine, operating throughout the country. This, just like what if they were in Mexico? What if you had Russian spies all over Mexico? These activities constituted, from the Kremlin's perspective, a dire provocation and would be seen as such by the United States if the situation were reversed and a rival superpower established such bases in Mexico. This perception is an inseparable part of the military and political context that shaped this war's outbreak. It can be dismissed as paranoid, but if so, it is a paranoia common to all security establishments. So what they're saying is Putin was afraid of the U.S., and his fear is exactly what the U.S. would have felt, the same exact feelings if the situation were reversed.
And I think you're overly sympathetic to Putin. And I'd like to read a couple paragraphs before we end. I know we're near the end.
Okay.
This is from Lech Walesa of Poland. Remember, he had to deal with the Russians. And he says, this is what he's saying now. We watched your conversation with President Zelenskyy with fear and distaste. He's talking to Trump. It is insulting that you expect Ukraine to show gratitude for U.S. material aid in its fight against Russia. Gratitude is owed to the heroic Ukrainian soldiers who have been shedding their blood for over 11 years to defend the free world's values in their homeland, attacked by Putin's Russia.
Yeah, so there it is. I put that up. So a couple of thoughts. One is, I agree. With part of that. I agree, Arlen. I don't think that Trump or Vance should have expected gratitude. I don't think that was the appropriate response. I don't think it matters very much. I think what matters is ending the killing, which is what they're trying to do. It seems very, very clear that that's what Vance and Trump are trying to do. But I agree with you. It was a distasteful look. Trump and Vance didn't handle that well at all. I agree with you on that point. Right. Or I agree with Walesa. I also would note that the people who died in this war, the Ukrainian soldiers and the Russian soldiers, it was a tragedy. It was a tragedy that could have been averted, that should have been averted. It wasn't averted because Biden, Harris, Blinken refused to negotiate. We were very close. We were close. I don't say close. We were close, and they stopped it. So if you want those deaths of those Ukrainian soldiers to mean something, then you learn from that and you say, let's not have more dead. That's how you can honor their death. That's how you can show gratitude, is by not having more people killed.
Yeah, but you're overlooking one major important thing, and that is it's Putin and Russia that invaded Ukraine. Ukraine wouldn't be in this position if they hadn't had an unprovoked invasion from Russia.
Well, we just went through that, and I think I showed you some pretty strong evidence that it wasn't unprovoked, that Russia had legitimate fears of the Well, you can shake your heads. You can shake your head all you want, but that's fine. We can disagree, but that's fine. Okay. But responsible statecraft and many other analysts have said, no, the U.S. did in fact act in very provocative ways.
Yeah, but that doesn't excuse what Putin did.
No, it doesn't. But it means that we should try. But the fact that Putin did a bad thing doesn't mean what we did was okay. A, and B, the fact that Putin did a bad thing doesn't mean we don't try now to end the killing, does it?
No, but Putin is certainly not a sympathetic person. He's a tyrant. He's a dictator. He's
not sympathetic. But the fact of the matter is that the soldiers who are being killed, whose lives are being lost, they are sympathetic. And what Trump is trying to do is to have fewer people killed or no more people killed.
I disagree.
Well, how can you possibly disagree? He clearly is. He just had that whole conversation where he was saying, sit down and talk to this guy because your country's being destroyed.
Trump wants what Trump wants. He's a negotiator. He just wants to get everything he can out of this situation because that's who he is. He doesn't care about the people. He cares about what he can get.
Well, it's funny because you don't want me to analyze Zelenskyy or put words in his mouth or put feelings in his mouth, but you know exactly what Trump is feeling.
Well, I've seen Trump over decades, and that's who he is. Everybody knows that.
Well, I don't think that's fair or true. In fact, you've even said on my program, even though you haven't wanted to acknowledge it, you said, yeah, well, when it comes to foreign policy, Trump isn't that bad. And Trump was against the war, the disastrous war on the people of Iraq from very early on. And that was before he had any political ambitions. Couldn't have been for political reasons.
I don't see anything coming from his feelings and his emotions and his heart. I think it's all about transaction with him.
Okay. Well, there's certainly that too. No denying it. But but we are where we are right now. And he's trying to stop it. Whereas Harris, Biden, Blinken, the team that you supported, they didn't try to stop it. They made things worse and worse and worse.
That's old news. And Trump keeps berating Biden all the time, saying what a horrible person he is, what a failure he was. They like to go back to Biden, what Biden
Well,
did.
it's not ancient history, is it? It just happened. And Biden did leave Trump with this terrible mess. So Trump's got a point. Did he not?
No. Al, you're forgetting again. It was Russia that invaded Ukraine.
Right. Okay. And it was Harris, Biden, Blinken that stopped the peace talks.
I mean, the reason we're where we are is because of what Russia did. And, the way out of it, well,
again, Arlen, it's like, I know you want to just say it's all Putin and therefore, and even if it were, which it isn't, but even if it were all Putin, Arlen, that doesn't mean you don't try to stop the killing, does it?
I agree. Stop the killing. I agree. We're not arguing that point. It's just what is Ukraine going to get if they negotiate? What's going to happen to their country? And Zelenskyy.
That's why you negotiate. That's why you negotiate, because if you don't negotiate, your country's going to be completely destroyed. So from the nation. To sum up, in the early weeks that followed the Russian invasion, Russia and Ukraine engaged in substantial attempts to negotiate a peaceful settlement. These could have ended the war before the devastation of Ukraine's infrastructure, the massive loss of lives, and the increased escalation. They didn't result in peace, but both sides wanted to keep talking, and then they stopped. Now, why did they stop? Now, part of the reason they stopped was because there were atrocities that Russia committed or was found to have committed claims that they committed atrocities, which is terrible. And that to me is a very big reason you continue to talk, because you're saying, hey, we want this to end, because when there's war, people are killed and atrocities happen, and the U.S. tortures people when there are wars, and all sorts of bad things happen. So the fact that Ukraine claimed to have discovered evidence of atrocities isn't, in my view, a good reason to break off negotiations. But that was part of the reason. But a bigger obstacle, this is according to The Nation, was when Boris Johnson, on April 6, 2022, almost 3 years ago, before all the destruction, devastation, when UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson flew to Kiev, and he brought two simple messages. One, Putin is a war criminal and you don't negotiate with him. And the two is, we're not going to guarantee your security if you have a deal with Putin. We're not going to protect you. And as a result of that, Johnson returned home. Putin said, nope, we're not having any more talks. And in response to that, there $130 million, $1 billion, $130 million from UK, 800 from Biden, because they broke off talks. Rather than continuing talks, 800 million. Now, you know who got a lot of that money, Arlen? Antony Blinken's former client, Boeing. Avril Haines, the DNI, Director of National Intelligence's client, Palantir. Lloyd Austin, the Minister of Defense, Secretary of Defense's client, Raytheon. They all made out like bandits as a result of that, Arlen.
All right, that's old history. We're talking about the previous administration. I'm talking about right now. And as far as I know, I don't think Putin and Trump have invited Zelenskyy into their negotiations. They want to make their decisions and then bring it to Zelenskyy and say, this is what you have to do.
Arlen, that whole meeting that we just played clips from was Vance and Trump urging Zelenskyy to engage in the discussions with Putin. That's why they had the meeting, to say, let's all sit down. That's why they've cut off arms. That's why they said no more arms, because you're not going to talk to Putin. So therefore, we're not going to give you arms.
Well, I don't think they want Zelenskyy in on the negotiations. That was what I thought.
Well, I don't think they want Zelenskyy making a lot of demands. I'm sure they want this wrapped up as quickly as possible. But that doesn't mean that they didn't say to him, be part of this. We want you part of this.
How could they make decisions with leaving Ukraine out of the talks? I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, but they're not leaving them out. The whole point of that conversation was so he'd be part of it. All right, let me just finish this. Then I got to go, but I'll give you final words. So from The Nation, Boris Johnson's intervention. He was, again, the British messenger boy for Harris, Biden, Blinken. Johnson's intervention has been discounted on the grounds that he was in no position to tell Ukraine what to do. But as Nation points out, legally true, but vacuous, an empty statement. Boris Johnson, as the Prime Minister of the UK, was in a position to tell them under what conditions Great Britain and the USA, because he had been talking to the U.S., because he was representing the U.S. too in those discussions, would supply further military and economic aid. Had Johnson's promise of support, in other words, we'll help you, been conditional, in other words, we're only going to help you if you negotiate with Putin, then the negotiations would have continued. But instead, the support was unconditional. In other words, we're only going to give you support if you break off negotiations, and we're not going to give you security. Because it was unconditional, the negotiations ended. So, in other words, we promoted the war. We kept it going.
Well, you're going back in history too far. I think what's more important now is Trump is president now, and he's going over to Putin's side, and I think that's horrible.
Anything else, Arlen?
Well, I just that I'm really sickened by the fact that I think our democracy is disappearing. Trump and Musk are doing whatever they want to do, and destroying the Constitution. The Republicans are not going to stop him. The Democrats don't know how to stop him. So I think we're in for some very rough times ahead.
There's some really terrible things that Trump is doing. No argument. We didn't get into the suppression of speech, which I am horrified by. I'm terrified that the genocide is going to start up again in Gaza with Trump's support. So there's many, many very legitimate reasons to be afraid of Trump, to criticize Trump, to go after him. But I just don't see this, meaning trying to end the Ukraine-Russia war. That doesn't seem to be one of those areas.
We disagree, and that's okay. That's just, what democracy is all about. We argue one point and you argue another point, and, we come to, we get our views out there, and that's what we did, and that's okay.
All right, Arlen, thanks so much for joining me. I presume I'll see you next Tuesday, or are you done? Tell me when you throw up your hands and say, I just can't do this anymore. All right, well, I don't blame you. But regardless, he's going to tolerate a little more. We'll see Arlen next Tuesday with Arlen. I'll be back tomorrow, Wednesday, probably in the afternoon, because I think I'm going to be going down to Capitol Hill to protest the treatment of immigrants by the Trump administration. So I think you would agree with me on that, Arlen. It's been horrible. It's awful.
Yes.
It's criminal. All right, we'll be back. I'll be back tomorrow.